Hey guys, Coach Edwards here with LacrosseGoalieTips.com and LacrosseGoalieUniversity.com. And I just want to talk about, I want to dovetail off of last week's email from Lauren about her stick. And this week I want to just talk about, again, I want to stay on the stick topic because this is a time of year when, goalies, we focus so much on stopping the ball, we forget probably one of the most critical aspects of our game, which is clearing the ball. Okay, and a couple of years ago, I worked with a goalie in California, and he was a diamond member of Lacrosse Goalie University, and we were doing a goalie critique pretty frequently. And what I found, this goalie was getting really frustrated, especially his dad was getting frustrated too, because he was making a lot of saves every game, and his save numbers, I can't remember what they were right now, but basically the number of saves he had to make was really high. And this kid came from a pretty good school in California. They played in a pretty tough league. They were by no means a great team, but he was a pretty solid goalie. And when I got a good set of footage from, the first week I got a goalie critique where I got footage and it was just him in warm-up. It was like basically a camera on him in warm-up and then every goal and every save he made. So I could only see him. I asked his dad when they took the video to basically pan out so that after he made a save, I could see where the passes were going. Because then I got a pretty good picture that the team had a really bad clear, and the defense weren't in the proper position. So this goalie was having to make passes that were really not necessary in a lot of ways. Clearing to me is a very simple process. And a lot of teams make this really complicated. A lot of coaches have no clue how to make it easy for the team they have. They just think, oh, my team, they got bad sticks. Let's get into the middies. Anyway, when a goalie makes a save, they need to make a good outlet pass. And that just doesn't mean that, I pass to you. It means I pass to you when you are open. I don't pass to you if you are covered. But what I see a lot of goalies have trouble with is that their sticks are, there's this talk about like, okay, I either have to have a deep pocket so I don't give up any rebounds, or I have to have a shallow pocket so I can make a far pass. So I'd like to add another thing into this equation, which is in terms of rebounds, let's talk about rebounds for a second. Everybody tends to focus on the stick and the stringing and the pocket depth in terms of giving up rebounds. No one ever talks about having soft hands anymore. Okay, when I was coming up as a goalie, there wasn't a lot of stick options, right? Like we have today. Here now with technology, we've got new sticks coming out every season, right? There's some new like crazy sidewall design to give you like extra yardage on your pass, an extra mile per hour on your shot, whatever. That is all just marketing hype. And what it does, it takes the focus off what really needs to happen, which is us physically and our hands. Okay, so having soft hands is really what you want to focus on. So for Lauren last week in her email with her photos that we looked at, she had a very shallow pocket so she could get far passes because she's smaller and she's not all that strong. But I would actually recommend a lot of goalies use a stick like that in practice to focus on having soft hands. Now, how do you have soft hands? Here's what you do. So one of the challenges I see a lot of goalies have when they're learning to play goal is they have a really tough grip with their top hand. In my DVDs on how to coach young goalies, you'll see our goalie when they first get their stick in their hands. They've got a very stiff grip. They're basically choking the head of the stick. The first thing I recommend goalies do is put your stick on the ground. Okay, put your stick on the ground flat. Take your top hand, grab it off the ground without moving your hands around it. And your hand is going to look something like this, okay? Now this by itself is a little awkward, so all you do to modify it is you wrap your top fingers around and you put your thumb either up the plastic or around the front loosely, okay? But my other two fingers are loose, right? We've got like cup of tea, right? It's tea time in England and we've got our pinky sticking out. We want to have that loose and soft. So because what happens now when the ball hits the stick is that the ball's going to hit the stick and that top hand is going to be able to give a little bit and the ball is not going to fly out of here like it's a tennis racket. Okay, that's not what we want, all right? But the challenge is when you have that soft hand is that if the ball hits, let's say the ball hits the side, like, or not the center of the pocket, but either side, is that stick may rotate, right? And the ball may still go in the net, okay? To counteract that, this is where the bottom hand comes into play. So the bottom hand is going to come around the shaft the same as the top hand, okay? British cup of tea with the fingers, right? Keep it easy. Okay, so but here I'm going to have a stronger grip, and this is where I usually have my tape. All right, I usually have my tape so that that stick, I've got a grip, and that stick isn't going to spin because of my bottom hand grip, not my top hand grip. So what happens is when the ball comes at me, I'm going to have a nice loose hand at the top, okay? And what I like to do is I like to basically kind of think of the head of the stick as an extension of my hand. All right, not that I have the stick in my hand. It's almost like an oversized baseball glove, right? So I have this big stick in my hand, all right, but it's really just extension of my hand, and that usually really helps me when I'm making saves. It reinforces that soft hand. Okay, so now what I do is I've got my top hand here, all right, nice and loose. Now when I come across my body, if I have tight grip here, if I'm making a save to my off stick high, if I come across my body like this, okay, then that stick will actually be rotated slightly to this way, right? So that this is kind of trailing away, if you can see that easy. Okay, it's almost like coming behind a little bit. That's if I've got that tight choke grip, right? So now I come across. When I loosen up my hand and I use my bottom hand and I rotate the stick across. So what I'm doing here is my top hand is going to be over my bottom hand, all right? The stick is basically rotating in my palm, in my hand here, right? And that way when it comes across my body, it is flush to the ball, right? It is perpendicular to the ball, so if it catches the edge, it's gonna get corralled in the middle, all right? And if I catch in the middle and it gets some, if it does get rebound, it's gonna go up and in front of me, not to the side, all right? And that all happens because I've got that loose top hand and I'm basically keeping my bottom hand tight, and that's where I'm getting the rotation of the head of my stick. Okay, that's really important. Okay, so we can talk about sticks, we can talk about mesh. Now in terms of mesh, I want to show you one more thing. Hard mesh, great choice. Before you string up your stick, soak it and then let it dry and then pull the heck out of it, stretch the heck out of it so that it deadens a little bit. The fibers break a little bit, because what happens is hard mesh, when it breaks in, should be soft. You see this? Right? This is nice and soft. Let me show you something else. Because sometimes kids write me, parents write me, and they go, my daughter's stick is hard mesh, but it's not, it's really hard. Well, here's a good example of that. This is a short stick I bought a number of years ago. And this is a Evo 4 with hard mesh. But the hard mesh is never really broken in. This is like a tennis racket, okay? It's quite firm, quite solid. And sometimes this can happen to hard mesh in goalie sticks. And when that happens, you just need to get another set of mesh in there, because you don't want your goalie stick to be like a teaspoon holding an egg. That's not the goal. You want that mesh to soften, that hard mesh to soften. We don't use soft mesh, because when soft mesh gets wet and then dries, it's like a tennis racket. We don't want that at all. Okay, so we do want the hard mesh, all right? And then from there, we're gonna be we got a pretty good setup, because that stick is going to give a little bit. Here's one last trick for you. All right. If you take the head of your stick and instead of punching out the pocket like this when you're in the cage and then getting into position, punch it out the other way. All right. So see this? The mesh is actually inverted. It's just one little thing that when the ball hits it, that mesh is going to actually it's going to get hung up in the mesh, more like a fishing net, right? So that's a little tip, a little pro tip for you. But give that a shot. So I hope that helps. Let's focus on the hands. Don't forget them, right? They're a pretty important part of the project here. It's not just our stick. It's not just our mesh. Hands are pretty critical, okay? So I'm Coach Edwards, lacrossegoalietips.com and lacrossegoaluniversity.com. Do me a favor, tweet it, share it, pin it, like it, plus it, find me on LinkedIn, and by all means, if you got a question for me, it's Coach Edwards, lacrossegoalitips.com, and I'll talk to you next week. Cheers.